You're listening to Experience Imagination, a themed entertainment design podcast presented by Falcon's Creative Group. Every episode, we discuss a new topic with a panel of creative professionals. Hi, I'm Cecil McPurry, President and Chief Creative Officer of Falcons.
Welcome to another episode of Experience Imagination. I'm your moderator, Audrey DeLong. Today, we're going to talk about the human side of animation. This is such a beloved topic. I don't know too many people who did not grow up watching some form of animation. I certainly indulged in my fair share of Saturday morning cartoons. For many people, the love and respect for the genre continues into adulthood, especially because of the way animated stories are now being told. I'm really looking forward to speaking with our in-house expert on the subject. Eric Calderon is a producer here at Falcons, but before he joined us, he spent 26 years as an animation producer, writer, and director, as well as a development executive. Eric will be joined by Cecil McPurry and Jason Ambler, so this will be an entertaining and insightful discussion. Before we get into things, I want to introduce everyone here. Cecil McPurry, who really needs no introduction. Hey, Cecil.
Hi, everybody.
Jason Ambler, our Vice President of Digital Media at Falcons, and a regular podcast guest. Welcome back, Jason.
Yeah, happy to be here.
And hello to Eric Calderon. He's with us today in the office.
I'm here in Orlando.
It's good to see you live and in the flesh, Eric. So I actually want to start with you, and I want to get us off to the right track. You've been in the animation production business for a long time.
Right.
So I'm wondering, do people in that industry get offended when they hear the term cartoon, or is it acceptable?
That's a pretty good question. I think a while ago, I would say, kind of early 80s, there was really only cartoony cartoons. But I think as they became more sophisticated, as they started to appeal to adults, and even as kids' cartoons got more grounded, I think it could be an insult to call someone's show cartoony or someone's design cartoony when they're trying to do something like, a cool, badass anime character or, a sitcom-y, grounded dad, and if you say, oh, that's too cartoony, it could mean it's too simple, it's too flat, it's not nuanced enough. But there are shows that are also cartoony that really celebrate being cartoons. So, it really depends on the show if cartoony is an insult or not.
Okay, so when you say cartoony, though, it does conjure an image of, like, Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah. I think the definition I like to think of is a character that has no emotional growth, that has kind of what I call like a gag bot reset. So, Wile E. Coyote gets hit by an anvil. He's not really hurt. He's humiliated, but he just resets in the next scene and he goes after Roadrunner again. So that's, to me, is cartoony. On the other side, you have, someone like BoJack Horseman who goes through emotional growth and fall and midlife crisis and change. And the first season version of BoJack is different than the third season version of BoJack. So, that to me is a totally non-cartoon cartoon. That's adult animation.
Would you consider the old cartoons kind of a one note in depth?
I think so.
Story?
Yeah. I think they came from the old kind of stand-up physical comedy, on a stage, slapstick. So,
yeah, vaudeville.
It's very vaudeville. Even the way they're staged and storyboard, it's like you're looking at a stage, two characters play a gag, and you reset and do it again. But you don't want someone's injury from the first gag to carry over into the next
episode.
You have a very limited set of gags once you break all your bones.
I love it.
Eric, since you went into the animation business, I'm wondering, did a certain animated program inspire you when you were young?
Well, it's funny. I have kind of two distinct influences. So, one, I like to say I got into cartoons because I refused to go to my violin lessons as a fourth grader because I wanted to watch Tom and Jerry. So, I had a big fight with my mom in the fourth grade. She was like, get up, go. And I'm like, I'm watching Tom and Jerry. And I kind of just outwilled her. And she just gave up. She's like, fine, watch your cartoons. That was really influential to me, the very cartoony cartoons. On the other side, I distinctly remember like late 70s watching Star Blazers. So Star Blazers was one of the early Japanese animes that they brought over. It was called Battleship Yamato in Japan. And now, it was marketed kind of like Star Wars. They even used the same font. And I was like, oh, this is a cool little space cartoon. And in the first episode, the main character's brother gets brutally killed in a space battle against aliens. Ugh. And I was like, I started crying and I wasn't ready for it. And I was like, what is this? And then my mom's like, what are you watching? What is it this time? And I'm like, it's Star Blazers, and he died in the first episode. But
Wow.
it really, it was
Emotional.
really an emotional experience for me.
It probably, you had that expectation set from the Tom and Jerry of the reset.
Exactly. I thought it was going to be
The
a fun...
style of cartoons gives you the safe
safety
and
net.
simple.
Right. I
Right,
mean,
wow,
no
interesting.
one ever died in Thundercats, and no one ever died in Spider-Man.
Right.
And suddenly I watch the Star Blazers anime, and I go, oh my gosh, no one's safe in this cartoon. And
Wow,
I think that
interesting.
really set an early palette for me.
That's interesting. Jason, I know you have a young kid at home. Does he latch on to any specific cartoon?
There's a lot of, really big cartoons right now that are out, animated kids television out in the marketplace. There's, I talk about it frequently in the office because I'm sitting there watching, like most parents do. I mean, at the end of the day, you're watching what your kids are watching, and I try to gravitate him towards the things that I can stand to watch. But really, for a lot of really young kids, I think it goes more into that cartoony genre of, color, high voices, bright light.
Certain age demographics, there's style and audio levels that are appealing to that, And so how deep do you go on story?
Even today, though, what you see is a great diversity of offerings. You see a lot of different characters on screen. You see them appealing to wider audiences, and you're seeing more, I think, unisex, gender-neutral content being produced. So they're not just appealing to boys or girls. It's really much more general.
That's interesting. Hey, by the way, it's raining here, guys, so what you're hearing is not Foley.
Real rain.
Real rain here. Welcome, Eric, to Orlando.
Thank you.
I think.
More rain than you've seen in a long time.
Oh, my
around
God,
here.
yeah.
Because we're talking about the human side of animation, Eric, I'm wondering what's your take on how gender depictions have changed over time?
About 10 years ago, I was listening to Disney's current research at the time, and that was 10 years ago. And they were talking about trying to put in more boy characters that expressed emotional intelligence. Because that was kind of a thing missing.
Right.
The boys are always depicted as like dumb or silly or being corrected by girls all the time, like stop doing that, and oh, you're just a dumb boy, whatever. But then this rise of the emotionally intelligent boy hero became a thing about 10 years ago. And then the opposite was true, is they wanted to show more female characters that had fierce competition. So fierce competition was a big word for young girls because they felt it, but their characters didn't express it.
It's interesting.
So having girls want to take charge and win was a realm you gave to boy characters, where the girl characters would say like, oh, you didn't realize this important thing, and they were trying to switch it.
Well, if you look at the evolution of animation, it's followed the same trends as the entertainment and content industry as a whole.
As a whole, yeah.
Which is, even 10, 15 years ago.
Or maybe even lead it in some cases.
Well, television, you were at the will of what was on TV. So if it was fun and entertaining, you'd flip the channel, you'd stop. But now you have choices. Everybody
there's
has
options.
access to streaming. So you choose what you want to watch. You have a different level of connection, a different level of brand loyalty to what you're watching. And it also means that you have to tell longer form stories and have people engaged for a longer period of time.
I think also that since there's that flexibility of choosing, you get to choose what's most relevant to you.
Yes.
And having more diversity in content is also a big part from those who are creating the content.
That's right.
You have a bigger audience. It's not just the main channels that are showing this on Saturday morning. All of a sudden, you have a lane of telling a story that might be resonating well with a new market that hasn't been present in the past, which is cool. It's more inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. I'm working with a major streamer right now, and I was fascinated by this broadcaster's research on depiction of fathers in cartoons. And they're like the stereotypical father in a cartoon is too busy, not present, and, not emotionally intelligent and not a good listener. Whereas mom is the one that characters go to, and mom is the one. So in this particular show that we're working on, we looked at the father and mother's occupations, and I suggested that the father be a nurse and the mom be an executive.
Nice.
Just so that the father could always be very comfortable with things that are gross, things like changing diapers and having a kid sick, which is typically when you see dads in cartoons, they're like, ew, that's for mom. Like your mom handles the gross stuff. But we were kind of challenging it by moving it around. But again, like we're influencing the human condition with this cartoon. It's not just about telling gags anymore. So I think that's a big trend. You're throwing this bias on this cartoon character that will then imprint on someone else, and it's like, are you going to always depict dads like this and always depict girls like this? And, I mean, on that same
Is there a
Disney...
danger of being too sensitive to these?
Sure. You can get an analysis paralysis. It's very easy.
Yeah.
But going back to that Disney research I did, one of the phrases they talked about was Hermione syndrome. And Hermione syndrome was putting a girl character in a show that corrects everyone else. That's the smart aleck, that's I know better, you guys should stop doing it, and basically the spoil sport. And so what you found is that typically older writers who came from like the 70s, 80s, all the girl characters were all like that. So you'd be in this funny cartoon, here comes a girl, spoils the fun, and leaves. And, I think there was a big pushback against, you got to stop writing girl characters like this.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Whatever the show was or is, the content hooks us for a variety of reasons, right? So, we're always looking forward to their next adventures or their misadventures, as it were. Eric, are animated programs doing something differently now than they did back when Wile E. Coyote would spend all of his waking hours devising comically complex ways to capture Roadrunner?
What we're doing is finally realizing, and creatives have known this for 30, 40, 50 years, but broadcasters and executives had to catch up, is that, animation is truly a medium. It's not only meant for, this type of thing. Whatever you bring to it, whatever story you want to tell, animation is just as capable as live action. And, when I went to the Annies last year, and the winner that year was I Lost My Body on Netflix. Really great, amazing, romantic horror movie. It's a boy meet girl story, but simultaneously there's a severed hand trying to find its owner. So great movie, but the producer came up and he said, this is based on a book, and we wanted to make this as a film, and we made it the way we wanted to make it, and we didn't think of it as live action or animation. We just think about telling the story. And he said, I hope that everyone in this room, that was in the Annies, will never have to ever answer the question, why is this animated? Because that's the worst question you can ask an animator, because this is my art form. It's like telling a photographer, why aren't you painting?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or, why did you make that painting realistic?
That's a great
Why just
analogy.
take a picture? So this is the craft that I'm good at. So that's why it's animated, not because it has this element that can only be done in cartoons.
That is good. So it's not
It's not
limiting.
limited.
Yeah,
Yeah.
animation could be whatever story needs to be told. It doesn't have to be live action or
or stop motion.
Stop motion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just all in the business of moving pictures. So, whether
Yeah.
they're drawn or live, it's the same.
Because of the maturity of knowing that animation could tell profound stories.
Yeah. Historically, if you go back, manga was the first mass medium that came out after World War II, basically decimated mass communication. The first thing they did is they put out comic books because they were cheap, they're easy. And so all the genres that people need as humans in terms of story, like we need romances, we need horror stories, we need educational things. The easiest way to do it was to do it in comic book form. So that's why from the very foundation, it always started off as an
Sequential
even
art.
plot. Yeah, sequential art. Whereas here, we had all these other mediums, and then cartoons were kind of pushed in the corner of just being comedy and kids. So it's taken us this long to mature it.
With any content delivery platform, looking at the beginnings of animation, it's kind of the same thing. It starts out as a novelty, and it's kind of the Wild West, and it's a little messy, and everyone's figuring it out. I mean, Steamboat Willie. It's it's just the novelty of the character and the moving.
The flip book concept was impressive, but the technology was the wow.
But I think about all forms of entertainment, they kind of start that way, and then they evolve. They get refined, and they do start to get closer and closer to story, to being immersive. I mean, theater, from the Greeks to now, it's all lighting and the production. And
Oh my gosh.
and new mediums like VR and whatnot, they're kind of in their new early novelty stages maybe, and they're going to get more exposure, and there's going to be stories to be told in other platforms and other ways
Just
to
another
deliver
medium,
content.
another medium for profound stories to be told.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the one trend that I always see. It's about making it more immersive, making it more connected, bringing people into your world. And I don't see that changing. I think that's just the trajectory of all content entertainment.
Yeah.
And like anything, modern technology plays a part. So I wanted to ask you, Jason, specifically for animation, what role has technology played in the transformation of animation, in the series format anyway?
Well, I mean, certainly back in the day, it's all hand-drawn, panels, and there were definitely major steps and milestones in the journey of animation to, the multiplane, to then bringing in a little bit of 3D for the environments.
2.5D.
Yeah, but the process in a lot of ways is the same. It's just the tools have
gotten more powerful.
The things that never change for me are still story and concept and character.
Mm-hmm.
And, you can have the fastest computer in the world, but it doesn't make the script any better.
That's right.
And so, having the time and effort to make a good script doesn't change, whether or not you're using Unreal or stop motion or 2D or 3D or Harmony or Flash.
Regardless
or
of the software.
Yeah, you have to write a good script or a good story.
The look of it, it could be the most beautiful looking thing. If it has no story, it's not going to resonate with you. You'll see, man, that was nice, but you'll forget it.
I think some of the things for me, from a technology standpoint, from a directorial standpoint, is yes, there's the script and the process is the same. But some technology, I think, has allowed me to visualize and work on the timing and cadence of something. Because when you read a script, it's on your time. But when you start to see how it rolls out, the animatics, being able to see iterations quicker and faster has helped a lot on polish.
Yeah, and I think also, if we're getting back to like cartoons as a human experience, one thing live action directors know is that the need to reshoot, the need to kind of just go back and do it again. And what they say, the difference is between a $30 million animated feature and a $100 million animated feature is not the number of assets or the look or whatever. It's that you make it 3 times in the $100 million one, and you only make it once in the $30 million one.
Interesting.
So what's great about technology is that you can reshoot. And, to get down to that human experience, you can look and say, I don't feel it yet.
Exactly.
I got to try it again. Different angle.
It could take literally 3 frames of a delay of someone's close-up on an eye and blink and see a little bit of glow.
And you go,
underneath. There's tearing
now I
up.
feel.
You could write, you're now emotionally connected as a sub-note to a narrative. But until you time it and feel it yourself with the right music. So to me, technology has allowed us, at least here at Falcons, to have more iterations to get that emotion that you're trying to get out of something.
Right.
It's really been a huge tool.
And that's a big change in animation, because if you think about the traditional pipeline, it's much more like a blueprint of architecture that then just gets built exactly as you blueprinted it. But you can't change it, especially in 2D animation with those TV deadlines. Whatever you storyboard and lay out and you color and you ink and you shoot under an Oxbury camera, you're locked with that. And if it feels stiff, that's too bad. That's too bad.
You think about the differences. It's like, let's hold on that shot just for another beat and get that extra performance.
Yeah.
You can't do that if you ran out of film or you cut the camera early.
Or
on
what if
set.
you wanted to relight it? There's no relighting in 2D animation.
Yeah, exactly. That's something I think you start to see a lot in animation now is voice talent, right? The increase of performance by way of true performers, from the voice talent. So to me, I think that's been huge too. It's not just the visuals that are driving it. It's actually the voiced performance.
You're 100% right, because voice talent in animation is changing a lot. It's becoming a lot more human. I think there was a time where, hey, I want to get into voice acting. So you would, record 7 really zany, wacky voices and accents. And there's always a market for that. But, I know there's 2 shows I think about in particular. One is City of Ghosts, which is a kid show on Netflix. They use real people because they wanted to get that tone. They wanted to get that imperfection.
You're right.
And then, my favorite show of all right now for adult 2D animation is Midnight Gospel. Midnight Gospel is literally an audio podcast. So Duncan Trussell has an audio podcast that he does. He got together with Pendleton Ward, who's creator of Adventure Time, and they said, let's just animate this podcast. So, Duncan brings in these crazy guests, the people who understand like magic and mysticism. They want to talk about their time living in jail. And he just podcasts them for like 30 minutes. But they create a little bit of a story arc. So there's a couple lines they feed in. And then, Pendleton animates crazy visuals. But you're listening to a podcast. You're not listening to actors.
That is cool.
Yeah,
what a unique medium.
So, it's getting a lot more grounded and real, except in Japan, where it's getting more and more stylized.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah,
huh?
Japan is
The
more
pendulum
like
swing.
Yeah, it's more like kabuki in Japan.
Oh, wow.
So if you're like the action hero, you have a certain cadence of speaking, and if you're like the innocent young girl, you have a certain cadence of speaking, and you can't really break that rule, or like their illusion breaks down. So opposite in Japan is it's very stylized.
Wow.
Yeah.
Would you say that Japanese anime served as a spark to start the new trend of humanness in animation?
Yeah, I mean that's a bigger topic, but I think anime has been influencing American animation since the early '80s. But there's decades of trends. There's '80s, '90s, early aughts, mid aughts, and now, and all of those have a different style and everything. And now, I've coined a term I call cowboy anime. So cowboy anime is any anime-influenced piece where the creative center is not in Japan. Castlevania, Blood of Zeus, Dragon Prince, Avatar, all these I call cowboy anime because they're taking what they feel like from anime, but then the creative center is always here. But what happens in anime that's a big influence on the human side is they do slice of life stories, they do romance, they do horror. And so those genres are now very exciting for Western producers and writers.
Totally.
But right now, what I do see is a lot of the producers and directors and writers are taking the flashy, exciting parts of anime and doing these spectacular action shows, or horror shows. But I'm personally hoping to see a lot more drama, a lot more grounded stuff that was really, to me, the really quiet, special side of anime.
The sophisticated aspect
Yeah,
of it instead of the
sophisticated.
spectacle.
Exactly.
Because it had both.
It has both, but we're only copying the top part.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to see Sideways as an animation.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? To me,
Yes.
that way,
Yeah.
if we can get there, then we really
That's
are on
cool.
something.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think
Very
it's,
cool.
it's the serialized aspect too. Like you mentioned BoJack Horseman, which is a story arc based on several characters that really BoJack. But all these other cartoons that I'm thinking in my mind, I'm a huge Simpsons fan. They're all one-off episodes.
That's
They
right,
don't really continue.
Yeah, it's great. The Simpsons writing rules is fascinating because I went to a panel of Simpsons writers like mid-90s at Comic-Con. I was like, I'm going to go here.
I'm jealous.
And they said, it's so simple. What they do is they take all the characters and they're all two-dimensional. So it's lazy dad, loving mom, smart-ass boy, smart daughter, And you take one of those two-dimensional characters and you try to have them force themselves into the third dimension. So what if Marge wants to be a working girl? What if Bart wants to be an academic kid? What if the bartender owner says, I'm going to become a race car driver? And all they do is fail.
Yeah.
And that's an episode.
Right.
And by the end, they get hammered back into their 2D definition.
Interesting.
And that's their basic filter of, is this a Simpson episode?
Very successful
Because you have to
model.
reset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Simpsons has persisted, but their formula stayed the same, and they are kind of that early 90s.
Yeah.
That's-
Family
that's
Guy is still The
successful.
Simpsons.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And The Simpsons is still The Honeymooners.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah,
formula
right.
still works.
It still works. It's-
You
well,
know
it's a
what?
satire, so there's endless stories for The Simpsons. Like you said, if they follow that rule, they can be on forever.
Yeah, that's right, which they kind of have been.
Yeah,
But
feels
you-
like
but,
it.
But in those types of shows where they have a very kind of constrained format, the things that I always love the most are those seasonal arc changes
Yeah.
and that affect the show permanently. Like those things are always the things that you kind of take away.
It stays relevant, right? So you do have some level of reaction.
Yeah.
If they were too easy to, change like the wind,
Sure.
it wouldn't be as strong as it is today. I mean, it is evergreen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's the characters, though.
Yeah.
And
But it's funny how the current trend of cartoons, is even kids and adults, is that you want to do the opposite right now, which is you want these journeys. So like, for Dragon Prince to proceed, each season has to be a paradigm shift.
Yes.
And that's the stickiness that makes you click the next episode. So those characters change, and actually, Dragon Prince I really love because you come for the adventure, you come for the spectacle, but what it's really about is it's about a father giving advice to a son who tries to then give that advice to his younger brother. And you see what happens when wisdom goes through Chinese whispers. And it's amazing. It's this really beautiful statement about how we deal with death. Because the father gives the son a speech about dying, and the father dies. And then the son worries that his younger brother is going to die, so he tries to give the younger brother the speech, but he does it poorly. But then the younger brother says to the older brother, no, you kind of got it wrong. I think what dad meant was this. It's amazing. And they spend all these seasons building up to that epiphany. And you see that little spoiled young character change and grow and mature because he's going to be king. It's beautiful. It's beautifully done.
Emmy Award winning.
Oh, yeah. But, that's where adult animation can be so human, because it can teach us about family, teach us about responsibility, teach us about love and loss through adventure, that we can take away some lesson from that. And I think that to me is like, what keeps me up at night in a good way.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
So guys, this was a lot of fun. I really want to thank you guys again for sitting around the table and having this discussion. Cecil, Jason, and Eric, thank you so much.
You bet. This was fun. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed
it's
it.
cool. Let's do it again.
Thank you, Audrey.
And thanks to everyone who listened to this episode. We appreciate you. We hope you're back with us next time.
Thank you for listening to Experience Imagination, a Falcons Creative Group production. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the podcast and share with your friends. To keep up with our latest news, visit us on the web at falconscreativegroup.com and follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you have any questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, please email us at podcast@falconscreativegroup.com.